What is beatboxing? Well, the answer to this question seems quite obvious, but it actually may be complicated. See, everybody who has seen or heard the performance of a human beatboxer at least once can give a raw definition of it based on his experience and linguistic tools. So for example, it can be conceptualized as the art of producing rhythmic drum sounds, patterns, or imitating instrument using only your speech organs. Or as an instrument and not the imitation of an instrument. Or simply as the best way of getting musical ideas out of your head and into the world. But also as making hip-hop beats with your mouth that actually seems to set up a well-defined genre/cultural enclosure, but we will get there in a minute. First, we have to take some steps back. What are we really talking about here? Essentially, we're talking about the human voice, this ancestral tool that nature has given us to communicate and interact with our environment. And we're not necessarily talking about words here, but about every sound that can come out of a human mouth to express one's emotion, such as pain, fear, excitement, or fun. It is our signature. Every voice is unique and reveals more than we'd like to admit about our personality. And that's why, for example...
Like beatboxing, right? Like when someone beatboxes, you can get their personality by how they move and stuff, you know?
Yeah, I'm trying to make a concrete point here, please. We keep abstract stuff for ourselves until we can document it properly, right? Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. So, yeah, every voice is unique and reveals more than we'd like to admit about our personality, and that's why, for example, we don't usually like to hear ourselves recorded. What I'm trying to say is that our voice is strictly connected with the self-image that we give to people, and it can communicate so many informations about us, about our personality, and words are really just a low percentage of what our voice expresses. So let's take a look at the human voice. The human voice, unlike all other animal voices, boasts of some unique features that has allowed it throughout the ages to develop in an extraordinary number of directions, giving us today between 6,000 and 7,000 languages all around the world. Then, since time unknown, people started realizing they could keep on playing one single frequency for an extended period of time, and that's how singing was born. So it started being used in a different way, in a musical way. And we all know that voice was the first ever musical instrument, and the first musical instrument were inspired actually by voice itself. Throughout
beatboxing is like inverting the trend now, right? Because before, instrument inspired by voice, and now voice inspired by instrument. It's like, you know, yeah, I'm gonna shut up. All right, sorry.
Thank you. So throughout the history, hundreds of singing techniques were developed alongside each different culture, with different purposes like celebrative, religious, entertaining, whatever. At a certain point though, our voice was used to imitate instruments, especially percussions. We often hear this expression vocal percussion, which is actually referred to all those vocal techniques used to recall or actively imitate the sounds and the patterns of percussive instruments. And we usually associate these terms to techniques such as Konnakol and scatting, even though they're quite different. Both consist in the use of syllable to speak rhythmic patterns, but for example, scatting has a strong melodic use of the voice. It's more a singing technique than actually imitating percussion, and plus it's highly improvised and it reflects that particular nature of jazz music. On the other hand, Konnakol consists in the pronunciation of rhythms through all those syllables used to define every sound that you make with the tabla, with the mridangam, with other Carnatic percussion typical in the South Indian Carnatic music. Together with the tala that consists in clapping the meter of the composition is called solkattu. And voice here is not exactly used to produce a melody, maybe to give a melody to the rhythm, you know, but also to imitate that typical tone variation of certain surfaces of the mridangam. If you haven't yet, please check out my last video, which is a cover of a really cool Konnakol composition. So unlike scatting in jazz, Konnakol is an essential part in the learning path of, you know, learning Carnatic percussion, as important as actually playing the instrument, and it requires years of rigid practice. However, during the last century, we can find many artists that started using their voice in quite a creative way, such as Michael Winslow, Mc Ferrin, Jarreau, Demetrios Stratos, Eve Bonneau, and many others that developed remarkably complex vocal techniques.
Yeah, but how about
Yeah, we're getting there. We are getting there, okay? So in the late 70s, in the eye of the storm of the rising hip-hop culture, some pioneers like Grandmaster Flash made the use of certain drum machines very popular. And when we hear the song going, until everybody knowing that Flash was on the beatbox going, beatbox, this term actually refers to this drum machine, the Roland TR-808, which was referred to as the beatbox because we all know it was a box that made beats. But hey, owning a drum machine was enough but not necessary to jam and rap together, so an uncomfortable situation like not affording a drum machine pushed people to fend for themselves and mimic those early funky hip-hop sounds and beats with their mouth, with their speech organ. Doggy Fresh is known to be the first to call himself the human beatbox, and is indeed one of the very first pioneers of what started to be considered by many the fifth element of hip-hop culture.
Knowledge is the fifth element?
Yeah, that's not the point here. That's not the point. For many years, this range of techniques called human beatboxing was just a little niche in the niche of the hip-hop culture. Then hip-hop rapidly became this global phenomenon we see today, and so did beatboxing too. Not in the same way, of course, but if before it was just a collateral practice between the usual hip-hop entertainment tools, with the new millennium, thanks to the internet, this niche of noisemakers started growing and growing and growing, and today the main online beatbox platforms counts with millions and millions of beatboxers and beatbox lovers all around the world. It's crucial to say that the main mean for beatboxers to give value to their skills has always been and is today battles, okay, if we don't consider talent shows, even though a battle is kind of a talent show. But anyway, we're talking about this specific formats of battles typical in the hip-hop world. And of course, in the hip-hop context, this was born as an alternative to gang war, when in the Bronx they said, let's put down our weapon and have a party instead. So this format has played a prominent role in bringing beatboxing where it is today. Now, going back to our question, what is beatboxing? What is beatboxing? Do you know that? What is beatboxing? So we can now understand its roots, but in the last few decades, it has reached such a high level of complexity and virtuosity that has definitely moved on from the concept of making hip-hop beats with your mouth. It has started getting in touch with much different musical and cultural context and deeper knowledge fields, so some people has actually started questioning the name beatboxing. And as a matter of fact, to find a coherent, clear, and complete term to define what beatboxing has become is no easy task, also due to the presence of some other terms like vocal percussion, previously mentioned, but also mouth drumming. Let's focus on that term, vocal percussion. If we consider vocal to mean produced through the vibration of the vocal cords, then we understand that most of this technique is basically not vocal. Indeed, the main sounds used to imitate drums in what we still call beatboxing are definitely not vocal, instead consists in creating and releasing air pressure inside of the mouth with the muscles of the oral cave, like so they're not necessarily vocal. They include all the muscles here, the lungs. Voice is sometimes used to enhance the timbre of certain percussion sounds like or then of course voice is used with a huge range of vocal techniques and vocal sounds and vocal modulations. So yeah, maybe vocal percussion doesn't really fit. And if we break this term down to its literal meaning, and we think about similar terms like body percussion, we will find out that vocal percussion should be used just with some weird techniques widely used in the beatbox world. Mouth drumming, instead, widely used in the a cappella world, can fit with all those pressure sounds we talked about earlier. But even though the sounds actually come out of the oral cave, mouth does not include all the other muscles and organs that are used in this technique. So yeah, maybe that doesn't fit either. However, it's easy to understand that these techniques we're talking about go definitely beyond our usual speaking muscle movement, unless we're talking about the Xhosa language. The easy Xhosa part of the Nguni language, oh my god, how difficult it is to pronounce these names, phonetically speaking, is the language which... Whoa! One of my softbox just decided to shut down. However, the easy Xhosa part of the Nguni language foresees the use of certain so-called click sounds for the pronunciation of certain consonants, such as So these sounds are produced both with a click sound, so with a pressure sound, and the vibration of the vocal cords. And again, this is not so different to some techniques widely used in the beatbox world. The closest expression, though, widely used by the avant-garde pioneer Reap Swan is speak music. And if you think about it, this expression can include all the elements of this art form, because it includes all the element and has that thing of communicating. It is still hard to find a noun to this expression, like I'm a speak musician. Plus, we could also identify Konnakol and scatting and just singing itself as speak music forms. So overthinking about this topic, a cacophonic, non-existing, really weird expression has come up into my mind, which is musical onomatopoeism. Terrible, right? Probably outside of any phonological convention. But if you think about it for a second, it could be a good option, because it's not about speaking in general, it's about those phonemes used to actively imitate other sounds that we usually hear. Maybe this would not fit if you thought about beatboxing better our speech organs as a proper musical instrument instead of the imitation of an instrument, but beatboxing was actually born mimicking beats, you know? And even though now the sounds are at a whole new level, the trend is more or less the same. We imitate instrumental and electronic music and electronic instruments. So yeah, all these options has their pros and their cons. Feel free to comment with your definition of beatboxing and let's have a debate about it. Now, let's try for a moment to think like we were talking about beatboxing as an actual instrument. Normally, to master any kind of musical instrument, be it a saxophone, a piano, a violin, a drums, or whatever, you follow two parallel kinds of education. The first one is the technical one, the muscle movement training, how you actually play the instrument. The other one, as important as playing the instrument itself, is a music theory. And this is completely overlooked by most of the beatbox community. We focus just on the technical side with no sort of methodical approach, which is okay. I mean, every beatboxer improvises their best and use the full potential of their mirror neurons at their best, imitating other beatboxers. And again, it's cool. We are still at the very beginning of something revolutionary that doesn't have a proper name yet, and that has been there for like 40 years or something. So we're still experimenting with all the possibilities of our speech organs. But our forefathers provided us with this amazing tool, and it's our duty now to carry that torch and take this discipline to the next level. And the key for an effective transmission to the next generation is systematization. We're kind of random, you know, but why such a lack of focus? Maybe the problem is in our reason why. So, we can now understand all the factors that make this discipline still a niche. We can understand why many people, especially musicians sometimes, still underestimate this art form and still see it as a talent show thing or a hip-hop thing. We can understand the barriers that limit this art form from getting out of the box. And we should not be looking for an external factor. As always, the source of our problem is inside of us, in the way we act. And we have basically to deal with one thing. We love to impress people. We love to impress people. Think about it. Done. Great.
Great.
Since its very beginning till the present, beatboxing, thanks to its non-ordinary nature, has always impressed people. I mean, think about yourself the first time you saw beatboxing. Yeah, for most people that was the first ever beatbox video. I'm sorry, old school. I'm sorry. Anyway, wow, right? I mean, that's always the first impression. So that reaction of awe is pleasing for the beatboxer as well as it is for all other artists. It is always nice to be able to exert that kind of influence on people. It just makes you feel right in some way. And what an easier way of achieving that goal of impressing people than covering famous songs. Maybe acting like an illusionist will help for sure. This is how you get the attention of the audience. This is the typical approach of a beatboxer with an audience which is not familiar with what beatboxing is. But it is even more interesting to see the reflections of this attitude inside the beatbox community. It's pretty easy to see how most of us in the beatbox community try to find the craziest pattern, the fastest pattern, the craziest, the lowest bass, the craziest sounds, and put them in what I like to call the impressive routine format, and which has basically become a standard in the beatbox community. I mean, we will analyze this in a specific way, in a musical way, deeper on this channel in further videos, but you don't need a degree in music to listen and to figure out that somehow we all kind of sound the same. You know, in shoutouts, in battles, there's this very frequent repetition of sound patterns, rhythmic patterns, structure patterns, you know, like the usual, you know, intro, vocal intro, and then drums, and then and charge for the drop, and then all the people going nuts. And it started being just about the hype, and I think it's because in our hedonic nature, we choose the easiest path. The one that costs us the less effort and gives us the best results in the short term. What I'm trying to say, it's easier to develop a craziest technique and put it in a preset structure, and maybe make a shout-out Swiss beatbox and win a wildcard and go to international beatbox events, rather than studying music and really studying the basics of beatboxing. It's not easy, of course, but it's definitely more efficient for the ego. Plus, beatboxing is already a niche, and the few beatboxers that know a little bit about music are a little niche in the niche, so they will be the only one to notice that you are good with the rhythm, that you make anti-rhythms, that you're clean with your sounds, and etc. So most of the beatbox community would not even notice if you work hard on that, because their attention is on the surface, is superficial. They're passive listeners. They're not active listeners. They want you to build up attention in them and then release it with a drop. And yeah, so this is why, in my opinion, it's kind of rare to find a really original beatboxer nowadays. But hey, this is also why, I'm not saying this is wrong, okay? This is also why beatboxing has reached such a high level and also spread so much. So this trend of focusing on this randomly directed technical development is important, is okay, but the importance of the method and music theory cannot be ignored. So it's always very interesting to see how many choices that we make are based on this kind of human need of appreciation, of attention. It's completely normal, and especially for performing artists, the feedback from the audience is the most important thing. I think every beatboxer is like this. Every person is like this at a certain level. What I'm trying to say is that we love to impress people. We like attention. Every beatboxer, like me, like you, and it's completely fine. But we have to acknowledge this and accept this in order to move on and start to focus. Only if we start changing how we live beatboxing, how we think about it, how we talk about it, how we actually do it, we will start changing its role in our society. Otherwise, people will just see what it is. This, a bunch of nerds with socializing issues that use a weird talent to win back their confidence. I'm kidding, of course. Anyway, there is no reason to thank you guys for watching, because I didn't ask for it. There is also no reason to subscribe to this channel, share this video, write a comment, and click the like button. click the bell, subscribe to my Patreon, and give me money, because I trust you, and I know that if you really enjoyed this video, you would have done it by yourself. Come on. All my patrons here. Thank you, guys.